Mm.
Today's topic is on hemorrhagic stroke or intracerebral hemorrhage. It is a cause for very serious and disabling condition, especially spontaneous intracerebral bleed. It forms about 15% of all strokes. Now coming to the causes, the first important cause is chronic hypertension. Patients with hypertension can develop small aneurysms called microaneurysms or Charcot-Bouchard aneurysms in the brain. And the pathology here is lipohyalinolysis. Now coming to the next cause, you have cerebral amyloid angiopathy. Third cause is anticoagulant or antiplatelet usage. Fourth cause includes presence of abnormal blood vessels in the brain, as in vascular malformations like AV malformations, saccular aneurysms, septic and mycotic aneurysms. Now, what are mycotic aneurysms? They occur in the brain in a patient with underlying valvular heart disease developing infective endocarditis. The clot will be dislodged to the brain and mycotic aneurysms result. Other causes for abnormal blood vessels are, in the case of cerebral tumors, cerebral venous thrombosis, vasculitis in SLE, and Moyamoya syndrome. The fifth cause includes systemic bleeding tendencies like hemophilia, leukemia, and thrombocytopenia. The next cause includes excessive intake of illicit drugs like cocaine and amphetamine. Trauma is yet another cause. Last but not the least, we have hyperperfusion. Now, what do you mean by hyperperfusion? A person with an ischemic stroke can present to us early, and after imaging, you consider thrombolytic therapy with the recombinant tissue plasminogen activator. And following this, the ischemic infarct can go in for a hemorrhagic transformation where the neurological symptoms may worsen. As I said, we have chronic hypertension with microaneurysms, mainly in the lenticulostriate branches of the middle cerebral artery and the paramedian branches of the basilar artery. You find that 25% of intracerebral hemorrhage occurs from rupture of aneurysms like the anterior communicating artery aneurysm or posterior communicating aneurysm, and this is common in the second to fourth decades of life, and 60% of this occurs in the parenchyma of the brain. We had mentioned on cerebral amyloid angiopathy, 20% of IC bleed is due to this, and it occurs in people above 70 years of age. And here, accumulation of the beta amyloid in the walls of the primarily small and medium sized arteries of the cerebral cortex and leptomeninges leads on to rupture or either weakening of the vessel wall or microaneurysm formation. In the case of oral anticoagulant use, you find that long-term usage of warfarin is responsible for hemorrhage, and anticoagulant hemorrhage forms 70% of the hemorrhagic stroke. And when PT-INR is prolonged, INR of more than 3.5 may predispose to bleeding tendencies. Now, cavernous hemangiomas predominantly in the supratentorial region affecting the temporal, frontal and parietal lobes may present with seizures, and majority remain asymptomatic and are frequently picked up on an MRI scan. Other factors include a low cholesterol level due to long-term usage of statins, and people on statins have an increased chance of developing IC bleed, and one postulated cause may be due to the weakening of the endothelial wall. High intake of alcohol is also one cause, and here there is a variation in the blood pressure, or alcohol may affect the platelet function and impair coagulation. Apolipoprotein E gene is also associated with intracerebral hemorrhage. Cocaine and tobacco use are also risk factors, and hemorrhage can also occur in neoplasms like glioblastoma multiforme, choriocarcinoma, renal cell carcinoma, and bronchogenic tumors. Now, infections, especially fungal infections, may predispose to cortical and subcortical hemorrhages, and here direct invasion of the vessel wall by the organism is the cause. Now, coming next to the clinical features, you find that the patient may present with altered sensorium, coma, headache, vomiting, seizures, and on examination, patient will be drowsy. Neck stiffness may be seen if there is bleeding which seeps into the subarachnoid space. BP may be high, especially the diastolic blood pressure. Focal signs and symptoms reflect the location of hemorrhage. Now, what are the usual sites of hemorrhage? You can have a lobar hemorrhage. Hemorrhage may involve the putamen, thalamus, pons, and lastly the cerebellum. Now, coming to the investigations, you do the blood routine, including platelet count is important. Prothrombin time and INR is important in patients on anticoagulant drugs. APTT may be done, and of course neuroimaging, especially a non-contrast CT, may pick up the bleed, and this is seen as a hyperdense area with surrounding edema. MRI is done to distinguish between old cerebral infarction and hemorrhage which occurs simultaneously. Now, CT angiography or digital subtraction angiography can detect the site of aneurysm and also ongoing bleeding. Now, coming to the management, as usual, ABC, airway, breathing and circulation requires attention initially. Rapid correction of Derange parameters like hypoglycemia, hyperglycemia, electrolyte imbalance should be attended to. Next, you have to control the blood pressure, and increase blood pressure increases the chance of hematoma expansion and carries a very bad prognosis. Reduce the blood pressure and reduce the size of the hematoma, preventing it from expansion. So, what are the antihypertensives you use? Labetalol does not alter the intracranial pressure and cerebral blood flow, and it can be given. Other drugs, after transferring the patient to the ICU, you can start the patient on IV sodium nitroprusside if BP is very high. Hydralazine and nicardipine can be used. AC inhibitors like enalapril may also be tried. Next, you go to the hemostatic therapy in patients on anticoagulant and antiplatelet induced intracerebral bleed. Warfarin inhibits the vitamin K dependent factors like 2, 7, 9 and 10. So you can give vitamin K to restore these factors. Next, you can start the patient on fresh frozen plasma, and yet another modality is giving prothrombin complex concentrates of factor 7, and this will provide the coagulation factors which are lacking. Now, this hemostatic therapy has a faster action in INR correction and no blood matching is required. Platelet transfusion is given in patients who have thrombocytopenia. Now we have a novel oral anticoagulant drug, dabigatran, and it is a direct thrombin inhibitor, and you have an antidote for this new anticoagulant. It is known as idarucizumab. It can be given. Now, of course, raised intracranial tension should be managed with osmotic therapy, especially by giving IV mannitol 0.25 to 0.5 milligram per kg, which is also an osmotic diuretic, and this should be given in 20 minutes. You can also give furosemide 10 milligram 2 or 8 hourly simultaneously. Hyperglycemia, especially blood sugar more than 140 during the first 24 hours of intracerebral bleed, carries a very bad prognosis, and you start the patient on insulin infusion to reduce the blood sugar to a level between 80 and 110 milligram. Of course, hypovolemia should be corrected, and you should also correct acidosis and alkalosis depending on the ABG results. Now, IV fluids mainly includes normal saline. Never give IV dextrose, which has a chance of increasing cerebral edema. Now, body temperature is also important. You should maintain the body temperature to normal. If there is hyperthermia, use acetaminophen or cooling blankets to treat high temperature, and if you suspect an infection, antibiotics may be started. Now, what is the role of anticonvulsant therapy? Prophylactic anticonvulsants are not currently recommended in intracranial hemorrhage. If seizures occur, you start the patient on anticonvulsants. Now, DVT prophylaxis may be prevented with intermittent pneumatic compression with elastic stockings, and you can start the patient on unfractionated heparin or low molecular weight heparin. Steroids do not have any role in intracerebral hemorrhage. Steroids like dexamethasone is given only in patients with intracranial tumors with surrounding edema. Now last, you send the patient to the neurosurgeon who will plan evacuation of the hematoma to relieve the mass effect, especially in large volume hematomas. So they will do a decompressive craniotomy, or they will put in an IC indwelling catheter and drain the fluid. So this is in short regarding hemorrhagic stroke. Now coming to the answers to the questions we had in the, I think the answers to the questions are given in this lecture. You can find out the answers from this lecture.